Hi, my name is Kevin Sandoval Cot, and I'm going to talk about the Cold War, a really interesting topic of a strange war that some might say still occurs up to this day. What first we need to see what was the Cold War. The Cold War was a conflict that appeared after the conclusion of World War II. It consisted of a nuclear stalemate between two or more, or maybe three, of the New World superpowers, the United States and Great Britain, but mainly the United States and the Soviet Union. Both of these sides had an economical system that each side intended to establish in the countries that each side had closer and as an ally during World War II. Yet the Soviets wanted to establish communism or socialism worldwide, which started this secret war where political, economic, and propaganda fronts were going to be the ones where it would happen. Some important dates of the Cold War are when the term was first used in the United States in 1947, the Cold War solidified from 1947 to 1948, and in 1949 the North Atlantic Treaty, or NATO, that opposed the Soviet Union, was created. Now, let's talk about what the term Cold War means. The term refers to a state of tension between two countries in both political and military subjects. This term specifically was created because of the tension between the countries previously mentioned, but has that as a general meaning. During the Cold War, nothing can be made to break diplomatic relationships, and strategies are used such as propaganda, subversion, threats, and economic sanctions, among other things. Now, let's talk about the economical systems that were involved in this war. First, we have capitalism that consists of giving an impulse to society into making a profit. Capitalism does this by letting markets have a lot of freedom regarding supply and demand and price setting, and letting private actors own property. It was proposed by Adam Smith, a Scottish economist and philosopher. On the other hand, we have socialism, that instead of letting each private actor own their own property, instead lets the means of productions to be owned in common. Leading to what it states as a more equal society. These means of productions are typically owned by the state. This theory was proposed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who later also called it Marxism. I interviewed there it is. Sorry, I interviewed someone of the age that lived or kind of lived during this part. It was my 17 years old aunt named Nelly managed to give me an opinion in relationship to the subject. She thinks that the Cold War was a really important worldwide situation that he commented a lot with her colleagues when it happened. However, due to it not being too present in Latin America and especially in Mexico, she said it wasn't that meaningful for her because she didn't find out a lot about it. Yet she states that it was a really important war that she thinks up to this day continues to affect countries worldwide, but not as hard as before. Now, I want to talk about some important parts of Cold War. First, we have what countries were the world leaders during this period. We have that there were a lot of important countries and alliances in the Cold War, yet the big three were always the United States, United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, as I kind of mentioned before. Why did the countries who were allies during the wars become enemies afterwards? Well, just as the image shows, and as it was mentioned earlier, the Soviet Union and the United States were part of the allies in World War II, along with a lot more countries that together fought against the Axis powers. However, they did this because an intern war between them could make the Axis win. So when the war was over, the difference of ideas and the previous tensions that were left apart due to a common enemy flourished and were the cause of this war, of this Cold War. Where did the Cold War take place? Well, you could say that because it was a major war that occurred because of the ideologies of two countries, that it happened almost everywhere, but you could say that the important places were Vietnam, Cuba, United States, Soviet Union, Korea, and Greece, between a lot more of other countries that had alliances. Uh, what opinion did the general public have of the Cold War? In general, I think that people among, well, not I think, people among the countries that experienced the Cold War weren't very much affected by it, not taking in account intern wars that came due to the Cold War, such as the Vietnam War, where people actually died. The Cold War just created conflicts in certain parts of the world, yet it didn't affect the main countries that were fighting, the USA and the Soviet Union. But there was something that happened in the United States, and it was the paranoia of the people. Because both countries had nuclear weapons and a great military power, people in the US feared a major invasion or a nuclear disaster, which was then seen as a common feeling among the population. But what type of weapons did the two world powers have at their disposal? And this is an interesting part. Even though common weapons such as firearms and normal troops existed, the most important weapons that the countries had during this time were the nuclear bombs. These were the ones that caused the nuclear stalemate and were the reason this war was named just as that. I didn't mention it before, but the name of the Cold War comes from the fact that neither of both countries could do too much to fight, because if that happened, it could have led to the possible destruction of humanity. So this caused a feeling of stationary war, in which neither side did anything huge, causing it to appear cold, frozen state. Finally, here's my opinion, and thanks for watching the video. The Cold War, I think, was a huge conflict that started a rivalry between two of the greatest world powers and gave birth to a huge number of alliances. However, I think that this event was a really important one because it marked both countries and even impulsed both economical and scientific development as a competition between those two. I think that the Cold War as we know it never really finished and continues in some sort of way up to this day, yet not as intense as it was before, but more as a competition of technology, propaganda, and even some minor conflicts, such as the recent Ukraine one. In general, I think that capitalism, even though I may be kind of biased due to the fact that it is the economical system of my country, is the better economic system of the two proposed. This is because I think that the freedom of markets, among other things about this system, helps increase the means of production and makes it sound a lot more fair. To gain what you deserve according to how much according to how much effort you put into gaining money. I think that socialism could work, yet it is very difficult thinking how we humans are. So thank you very much for watching the video, and that was all.